Good evening, good evening. What it
Hi,
do, what it do?
everybody.
What's happening? Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Thursday, 9
Thursday.
o'clock,
Thanks for joining
and
us.
you know what that means. We are here, you are there, and we are all together at the same time in place and space. So glad to be back. It's been a day, let me tell you. I don't know how about you, but I had a day. Did you have a day, wife?
I had a pretty cool day today.
You had a pretty cool day?
Yes, it was pretty chill today.
Outstanding. Well, I'm glad one of us had a pretty cool day. I'm telling you what, been up all day long, been up for over 12 hours, 14 to do the math, a lot of hours, been over for a lot of hours, and your boy's tired. So we're going to get through this show, and then I'm going to bed because I'm tired. But listen, it's Thursday. It is 9 p.m. Hope you put the kids to bed because they ain't got no business being up this late. No way. I know what you're thinking. It's summertime that the kids had a fun, but send them in the other room because it's mom and daddy time. It's grown folks time, and we finna talk about some stuff. So listen, she's Vetta.
And he's Mac.
And this is Couch Conversations. Always glad when you can share it with us. Always glad when you can hang out with us. We never take it for granted. We do not take your time for granted. We know that it's kind of late for some folk, and some people are already in the bed because they got to get up in several hours. Somebody say, y'all on too late. I got to get up at 10 o'clock in the morning. I can't be up with y'all. It's like, okay, if you can't stay up for 1 hour,
10 o'clock in the morning.
Listen, with all of the smart TVs, Apple TVs, Google Chromecast, Roku's out there, if you can't cast this to your TV while you laying in bed, then we got a problem. It's 2021. Some of them folk do. That's the thing. Some of these people don't be asleep. They just don't want to. It is what it is. Praise the Lord.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for
if you are here with us tonight, thanks for staying up and listening to us tonight.
Amen. Praise the Lord. What she said.
We appreciate you being on here with us tonight.
And we do. I really do. You know, I don't take it lightly.
The very few that we have still awake.
Amen. Amen. So listen, tonight we are continuing our series on boundaries. Last week was part 1. Tonight is part 2. We're going to be in boundaries series all month of July. And so we are continuing with our series. Last week, I think we had a good conversation. It was a good discussion about boundaries.
I'm having a time with this
setting them, honoring them.
Sorry.
The mic is just like your husband. It want to be close to you. I'm just saying. It wants to be close to you.
Just to be close to you.
Girl. Watch out then. Hey. You're going to mess me up now. You know I can't stay focused.
Boundaries.
I can't stay focused. Last week, we had a good time talking about it on July 1, July 1st. Y'all talked about me last week because I said July 1. But it was July. It was the 1st of July. It was the July 1, 2, 3. Today's July 8. But last week,
says on the calendar,
we set a good foundation for the conversation. The reality is people struggle with setting and honoring boundaries in their marriages and in their relationships. So it's important, I believe, that married couples have this conversation. We had our conversation. We have this conversation, I think, often about boundaries in our relationship. And, you know, in various ways. That's why this is a 4-part, 5-part series, because the reality is there are numerous aspects of your marriage that require a conversation about boundaries. It's not just one area.
Well, we're surrounded by them, so.
We are, and it's important. I think you might want to twist that just a little bit. Out there you go. Now we cooking.
Can you hear me now?
Oh.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
So angelic. Praise
Sprint. Oh, they're not a sponsor.
Look,
is it Sprint anymore?
No.
Oh.
Sprint
Can you hear me now?
merged with somebody. They're not there no more. That's all we know.
Can you hear me now? So, it's like moving. I'm sorry. I'm struggling with this mic today.
I want to be close to it.
Okay.
It's good.
There you go.
All right. There we go.
So we're surrounded with boundaries.
That's what you were starting to say.
Yes. Yeah. And then you started to say.
I don't think I started to say. I was waiting for you to finish with that. The mic started infringing on my wife, and I was getting ready to come over there, touching on my woman.
Boundaries.
But boundaries are important in the marriage. They're important in the relationship. And there are several areas of the life of the marriage where we need to have a conversation, or at the very least, an understanding that boundaries should exist.
Yeah.
And we should be honoring them. because it's what helps keep the marriage fresh. It's what helps keeps the marriage secure.
Yeah.
And
secure. I like that.
The worst thing that you could ever do in your marriage is play the guessing game.
Mm-hmm.
But boundaries help you to avoid that. So tonight we're going to continue the conversation about boundaries, and we're going to be talking about boundaries. But watch this. Part 2 of the boundary series is about the in-laws.
Dum 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 dum.
Yes, the in-laws. Now, I want to be clear off the top. The phrase in-laws is not limited to the parents.
Right.
It's not just my mother-in-law or my father-in-law, or in certain cases,
it's the family-in-law.
It's the family-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, cousin-in-law, uncle-in-law, auntie-in-law, all of them, grandmama-in-law,
papa-in-law,
all of them, all of that. Anyone that you are by law related to in love.
Yes.
Let me make sure we put that out there.
The in-loves.
Because you hear people say that now. Oh, she's my mother in love. Really?
Yeah.
Y'all been married 2 days.
No. Oh, yeah. I mean, but some people feel like that's why it's that term, because you love them so much.
No, they do. They use that term because they scared of them. Let's tell the truth. No? Okay. I'm sorry.
Don't do that. Some people really do love their in-laws.
Don't get me wrong. I love my mother-in-law.
So that's why they say love, in love.
I love my mother-in-law. I do. Peaches is
I
my
mean,
girl.
you don't have to use that term, but people who use it really do love their in-laws. So that's why they say, because law sounds so like, it does sound scary. In-law. Oh, that's your in-laws.
That's a little intimidating.
In love, that sounds more endearing and loving.
But now see, here's the challenge. And I'm going to be honest. You know me, I like to be honest. And I also like to be.
Sometimes your honesty is.
Well, we'll get to that when we get to Venice verse. If I'm being honest, 20 years ago when we got married, I didn't love my mother-in-law. Why you make a face? What's the face? Don't make the face.
I was like, what?
I would not have referred to her as my mother in love because there was
because it was new. You didn't know her yet.
Yeah.
Okay, I was about to say, wait.
Yeah. I didn't.
Watch where you stepping. I was about to say.
Right there. That's why we got to talk about boundaries.
I was like, wait.
Right there.
Don't be talking about you don't love my peaches.
I love her now.
Yeah.
She's my peaches now, not because she's your mother, but because of the woman that she is for me.
Yeah.
Now, 20 years later.
I understand that.
But 20 years ago, I would not have. I might have even gone as far as to refuse to use that term in love.
Yeah.
Because there was no love. I appreciated her for her part in producing
you. Said that sounds so mean. There was no love.
There wasn't. I'm just being honest.
There was no love.
I'm just being honest.
I didn't love her.
I didn't not like her. I liked her. She was good people. She had a great heart and big heart, and she was,
I understand. I'm not,
and she treated me well. It's not like she was never mean. She was
no
never
shade.
None
no
of that.
shade.
None of that.
He's just explaining his point. You got to put it out there because people are like, he ain't like her mother.
Yeah. Lisa, hush. Don't be snitching. I love her now to life. But in the beginning, that's just what it was. It wasn't a, it wasn't a love relationship then.
And I think
we grew into it.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I think that's what it is in the beginning. Like they are your in-laws because you don't quite know them just yet.
Right.
And so you grow to love them. So, yeah. I mean, that's the same for Ma.
Yeah. Right.
Because for a while, and I'm gonna be honest, for a while, I wasn't comfortable calling her Ma.
Sure.
I would just call her Miss. I don't remember what I called her.
Mama
Miss
Moore?
Yeah.
I think it was Mama Moore.
Yeah.
I think it was Miss Moore at first.
Yeah.
And then eventually that kind of just gravitated into
But you grow to love people. I mean, I did like her. She was a sweet lady. I was afraid of her at first. We'll get into that story later.
She's still around. She's still around. She ain't gone away. Yeah, well,
but I love my mama.
Right. And it's interesting. Like even when you take that term in law, you're related by law, right?
Mhm.
Because the marriage should be legal,
Yeah.
right? The law is involved in the marriage, and
So
so
that's why it's
by
the
law,
law.
we're
Yeah.
in, by law we're related. And then people, once that endearment has become apparent,
Mhm.
they'll try, oh, that's my mother. And now I've seen people do it at the reception
Yeah.
when they making toasts and speeches, and I just want to thank my mother in love, and she's the best. Or my father in love.
Well, just because it's part of the relationship that they had or have, or
But is it though?
I don't know. I can't speak for other people. I'm
Amen.
just
Yeah. All right. I
I'm
guess
just,
I'm
we'll
getting in
have to
trouble.
ask people that, like,
Yeah. Put
how
that in the
soon, yeah,
comments.
how soon did you call your in-laws your in-loves, or do you call them your in-love?
That's a good question. Make sure that's a good place to
That is a good
remind you
place.
to follow us on social media.
And what got you to the point where you was like, oh, I guess I can start saying
Right.
not Mrs. or Mr., but
Right.
mom or dad
sir,
or
right.
pop, or yeah.
Right. Now I still call your father by his first name.
What? Ooh.
No, Mr. Davis. Mr.
I'm about to
Davis.
say, ooh, no, you don't. Come on.
Quick note, make sure you're following us on social media, Twitter,
Yes.
Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Yes.
And let us know if you remember the moment when you transitioned from in-law to in-love. That was my mother-in-law. Now she's my mother-in-law. Let us know.
Oh, ma, oh, mommy.
That, or whatever term of endearment that you chose
Mother,
to
madre,
use
pop.
as a result, or instead of Mr. or Ms. or Mrs. and then their last name, whatever the last name is when it pertains to them. I don't really think the same applies to like a sister-in-law or a brother-in-law per se, because those are generally always first name basis.
Yeah, I'll just say sister, brother.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that the handful of people I've ever needed to introduce Lisa to, that's my sister.
Yeah.
Most people kind of figure it out because she looks almost just like you. Pretty close, but not quite. Don't be shaking your head at me. So let us know that. Make sure you're following us and send us a message. That's why we want you to follow us. Send us a message on Twitter. Send us a message on Facebook, and let us know when that changed for.
And if you don't call them nothing at all,
yes,
like, why is that?
Let us know all of that.
Yes,
We'd love
all
to
of
hear
that.
from
We
you.
like to hear that.
All
Stories.
of that. Right.
Boundaries. Let's
Boundaries
go.
with that. But it's so true. It's not. And again, we said it earlier. It's not just the parental figures, right? It's not just the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, the stepmother, stepfather, what have you. It's all of that. The sisters, the brothers, all of those are your in-laws.
Yeah.
And so you've got to set boundaries for all of them, because where the parents may be cool, maybe you haven't met that one cousin yet.
Right.
And now that one cousin that you see at the
don't know the boundaries. Yeah.
That's true. It's just, so you got to be careful. I just heard a story the other day where a young man was dating a young lady, and they met in college, and they just hit it off real well. And she took him home to visit her folks and meet the folks. And the father got to asking him questions about his family and where he was from. And it turned out they were cousins.
Oh, yeah. Be careful about that too.
Listen.
Ancestry. Yes. Be careful about that.
Ancestry. Also not a sponsor.
Right.
But you want to make sure that you have those conversations, hopefully, prayerfully, for however long you've been married. I was concerned. I'll be honest with you. When we were dating and all these people that we found out that we knew that we had in common, I was a little concerned. Yeah. I was just a little concerned.
That's why you gotta know your background.
You got
all of them last names and who married who.
Because I don't know everybody on my father's side
of
the family. I know one or two cousins, Cookie and Alton, but I don't know a lot of my cousins on my father's side of the family.
Throwing names out.
Right. What?
No.
I mean, they ain't watching. And if they are, God bless you. Good to holler at you. Praise the Lord. But I know I have a lot of them. When my father passed away and we were at the funeral, the funeral home was packed, and everybody said they was all family. I remember sitting in a room with 3.5 dozen cousins that I ain't seen since.
How do you build boundaries with in-laws?
So that's a good question. We're going to talk through that a lot of bit tonight. But I think it is important that you identify them first. The reality that all of these different relationships need different boundaries, because there are boundaries that are in place for Peaches that are not in place for other people, and vice versa. Peaches can say certain things to me, and I'll take it and I'll listen to it and I'll absorb it and I'll embrace it. I'll lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
But if some of the other ones come and say something, I'm not calling no names because you got a lot of siblings who still have license to carry. But if some of the other family decided they wanted to offer up some advice or some suggestions, I'm leaning back from it a little bit,
right?
Because they're not her.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is important. An important distinction that we should make is one boundary for one in-law does not necessarily apply to another, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think we really need to remind people you'll have a boundary for a spouse's sibling or a spouse's cousin or a spouse's auntie, uncle that is not in place for a spouse's parent.
That's true. And family members be getting offended.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you ain't invite me. Well, because I didn't want to. Right.
You ain't them.
Don't get offended. Like,
that's how that works.
Certain people have boundaries and certain people have different boundaries.
Yeah. And boundaries.
Your boundaries are just further away.
That's right. That's right. Boundaries both remind us of our role in each other's lives.
Mm-hmm.
They also remind us what we can do.
Yes.
What we can say, as much as they remind other people what's off limits.
Yes.
And I think people forget that about boundaries.
Yeah.
Because they look at how much is outside of the bounds.
Mm-hmm.
They forget to look at what's inside the bounds. What am I free to say and do because of the boundary that's been set?
And because we are a family unit.
Yeah.
Some boundaries shouldn't be crossed because we are a family unit first. Because you suppose as a husband, your main priority is your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And things can't get to me if that boundary is set in place in order for you to keep me protected.
Right.
Because boundaries are to protect.
Yeah.
And if it's something that's coming at me that you don't want to harm me, even if it's a family member or even if it's a friend or a mom or a dad, that boundary can't be crossed. And you have to set that boundary and let people know, like, this is it.
Yeah.
I'm protecting my family. I'm protecting my wife. And this is how it's going to be.
Listen.
Because this is the boundary that we are in and you have no place in it. I mean, it may sound harsh.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to protect your family. Doesn't matter who is from.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's so tricky when we do not allow our spouses or we do not allow our marriage to define the boundaries for us. If you've had a chance to get the book, there's an illustration in here that talks about it. See if I can show it to you real quick. Here it is right here. Bam, right to it. Bam. This here. Can y'all zoom in over there, camera people? Let's see if they can zoom in. Hold on.
But boundaries are important even with your closest family members.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they have to understand what it is.
They got it? Okay. I can put it down. Did they get it? But as long as they can see the diagram, they can't. Okay. We'll be all right. Get the book. It's in the book. You can find it on Amazon.
The voiceover toilet paper.
There it is, right there. You can see the title at least. There you go. All right. The point is, go back to when you were dating, right? You left your circles, you left your boundaries to see about your spouse. Y'all became married. You created a new family unit, a new family circle. And in that circle lies the husband and the wife.
I'm going to get a dry erase board so you can draw it out.
That's good. We might do that next week.
Yes.
Put it right back here or something. Yeah. We'll figure it out. But so imagine now you and your spouse, husband or wife, you and your spouse are in a circle, in a boundary. Well, I know, like, my wife is a twin. And even though I want to be delicate with this, her and her twin,
I said, because you know she listens.
You know she listens. God bless you. Love you, Lisa. Her and her twin, they shared clothes, they shared shoes, they shared
bedroom,
they shared socks. I mean, everything, right? Up until we met.
Mm-hmm.
When we met, they were sharing a room still.
Mm-hmm.
And so I basically pulled her out of that circle with her twin and placed her in mine. And so there was a season of, I'm calling it a season of rub,
Mm-hmm.
where her twin had to understand what you used to be able to do, you couldn't do anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that Lisa didn't respect our marriage. She just didn't understand the boundaries that our marriage produced.
And it was new, and things that are new you got to get used to.
Right.
So
and it takes time.
And it takes time.
If you just got married in the last year or two, you've got about another 3 or 4 before those siblings, those cousins, those parents recognize where the boundaries are without you having to remind them.
Yeah, because before you're doing life with your family.
Right.
And then you get engaged. I mean, or you're married now, and then you're doing life with just that person. Right. Or if you have kids and the kids. Right. But it's a different circle as you trying to demonstrate. The circle becomes different because before you get married, you're in this circle. And then when you come out of that circle and join with your spouse, it's a totally different circle. So that circle cannot join the circle with your spouse.
Right.
So it's on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Ooh, on the outside looking in.
That's good. Oh, that's good. Write that down. We're going to talk about that later. Yeah, and it's important that we allow the marriage to define the boundaries and remind people to respect them. And we've got to be okay with allowing the boundary to remove people from our life.
Yes.
I think that's where a lot of couples that I've talked to anyway, ones that I've counseled, couples that I've helped, couples that have come across and reached out for help. A lot of it, as it pertains to boundaries, they don't know how to process when the boundary no longer permits certain people to be in their life.
Right. And they may feel slighted and misused or I just had a brain freeze. Alone. And then you may feel rejected or something from that person that just left that circle that you used to be in for so long.
Right.
And then you're not there anymore in that circle. You've started a new circle and a new life with your spouse. So things do have to change because that relationship has to grow.
Yeah.
You've been growing with that person before your spouse for so long, maybe 18, 19, 23 years, 24, with these people, other people, family members, friends. And then you start a new life or new circle with a new person, and that relationship has to positively grow.
Right.
And if your circle is rubbing up against that new circle, it could cause friction.
Yep.
And you don't want to cause friction in a relationship that's brand new. And
you're teaching.
So
it's so true. And we've got to be okay with that, because you got to remember the circle that you're in with your spouse, you chose to be there.
Yeah.
People, I think, forget that part. Whether you are the one who made the proposal or you're the one who accepted the proposal, either way, by saying I do, you're saying I agree to make this union, this relationship, this circle of greater importance than every other one. And a lot of people struggle with that because of the ramifications of that choice. And I think, we're on this side of the I do's. We're already there. And so you really don't want to go back and reconsider because you're already here. But you need to consider what that means, the ramifications of that choice. You need to consider the impact that choice has on people. Somebody said the other day, what I choose to do doesn't impact anybody. It doesn't matter to anybody. But the reality is everything that you do impacts somebody else.
Right.
We've talked about it several times, how just buying a newspaper these days, if I choose to buy a newspaper, that's less money that then you have access to if some emergency arises. A lot of people don't see it that way, not because they're ignoring their spouse. They're not looking at, the only thing they are looking at is the minimal cost of the newspaper. It's only, what are they, 35, 55 cents? I ain't bought a newspaper in a long time, so I don't know how much it costs. But the cost of the newspaper is so seemingly insignificant that nobody considers that.
Yeah.
And we've got to get to the place where every decision that we make, every choice that we make, we have considered it relative to our spouse. How is this going to impact my spouse?
Tips for setting boundaries with your in-laws.
Come on with the tips. Come on with the tips. What's the first tip?
What's the first tip? Don't compete.
Ooh-wee. You can't do it. You can't do it. I was doing some research and I came across a blog written by a therapist, Matt Christensen. He's wrote it several years ago. But one of the things he said was romantic love and parental love are totally different.
Yes, they are.
Now, his article was focused primarily on the parental in-law piece. But it applies when you're looking at the romantic love versus the familial love. Your love for your sister is completely different than your love for me.
Right.
And so we've got to be okay with that. We've got to respect the fact that there's no need to compete. I can't tell you how many times married couples get in trouble with each other because one spouse is trying to compete with a sibling, trying to compete with a parent, trying to compete with a family member, somebody that's not in the circle. And the reality is, when you're talking about apples and oranges, there's no competition. That's why they have that expression, comparing apples and oranges, because they're not the same. They might be both fruit. That's the extent of it. The skin isn't even the same. The outside, the inside, none of it is the same.
Isn't even the same.
Exactly. So they don't even produce the same juice.
Right.
So therefore, it's not a fair or viable comparison between the two. The same is true about the spouse relative to the family members or the in-laws. I'm not able to compete with Lisa, nor do I have to.
Right. Because that's a different love.
Completely different. Right. They're based on and founded in different fields, completely different areas, different arenas. If you're just joining us, we're talking about our boundary series. We're continuing our boundary series. This is part 2, where we're focusing on in-laws and discussing in-laws. So hopefully you'll be able to glean something from what we're talking about tonight. And we just looked at our very first point, which is don't compete with your in-laws.
Right.
If you're the spouse, if you're the husband, if you're the wife, don't compete with your in-laws. And I mean, first of all, you got a lot of siblings, so I ain't even gonna try to compete with all of them. There's too many of them. It's too many of them. They're all different personalities.
And isn't it the same as the in-law shouldn't compete with the spouse?
They
or are we just doing it one direction?
It all goes both ways.
Yeah.
It all goes both ways. Because you'll have, people who I'll leave that out. But you'll have siblings or parents, you see them all the time. Can I get 5 minutes? Or you get them all the time. Can I, you know what I mean? And that should not be the case. We should balance our time among our family. Absolutely. But there should never, ever be anybody competing. If you're the sibling or you're the in-law or you're the family member and you're dealing with, if you're a brother who has a sister who's married to a guy, don't try to compete with him for her time or her attention or anything like that. And vice versa, sisters who got brothers who are married to females, parents. I think it's real prevalent with parents.
Yeah.
Because you always feel like you have to compete with the spouse that they chose to be with.
Right.
They didn't choose the spouse over the parent.
Right.
They didn't choose the spouse instead of the parent.
Right.
They chose the spouse, period.
Right.
And I think we forget that sometimes. It's not saying that one is better than the other, because the reality is you're not comparing apples to apples.
You shouldn't compare.
You should not. You should not compare. Romantic love, husband and wife, completely different, totally different than parental love, sibling love, or any other form of familial love. And we'll probably touch on that part a lot next week when we talk about the children. Oh, no, wait, that's the week after. Sorry. Never mind. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Getting ahead of yourself.
I apologize. I apologize. But the reality is, you're looking at all of that, and it is important that we don't try to compete. Either the spouse trying to compete with the in-laws, or the in-laws trying to compete with the spouse. And you'll get that a lot of times with married couples because someone is jealous. Basically, competition generally is born out of jealousy. Now, I mean, we're not talking, we're competing on a track meet or we're competing in a basketball game, but we're talking about that. I look at you and I see how your face lights up when they come in the room. Well, I'm going to see if I can't do better.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we're competing for no reason.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of competitions that we're talking about, trying to one up somebody else because they produce a certain reaction in your spouse,
right,
or in your family member when your spouse does that. I'll admit, if I could be candid a little bit, I never liked Gerald, your cousin Gerald, because he would do that. Like, it was, Gerald is coming, Gerald.
Oh,
it made me
I
sick.
was like, wait.
He got on my
You
nerves.
don't like him?
Oh, I love him. That's my man.
You just saying because we were always so excited.
Yeah, it was a whole different kind of excitement. Right. That's my dude. That's my man. $100,000. Probably calling tomorrow just to say, hey.
You don't like. I was like, wait, I was confused.
No, that's my man now.
He's just saying.
But
he's just saying we were so excited.
When we were planning for the wedding,
favorite cousin.
Right. Planning for the wedding. Gerald's got to sing it. Gerald's got to sing it. We can't do it if Gerald can't make it. And if he can't be there, we got to schedule another time.
We love you, Gerald.
I was sick of Gerald and I hadn't even met him yet. But now that's my man, $100,000. And, so I'm speaking from a place of personal experience with the competition piece. But even though I don't think I ever did and tried to compete with him, I did have that moment of jealousy because of the emotion and the excitement that he motivated in you.
Yeah.
What he brought out of you was something that I hadn't seen. And it wasn't until I matured and realized that's her cousin.
Yeah.
He was there, first of all, longer than me.
Yeah.
Second of all, they had experiences that you and I would never share.
And that's what has to happen. Like, as a spouse, you have to understand the relationship between the family members. But the family members also have to understand that now it's this new person who they have to now grow with. And yes, your relationship was important then.
Right.
And you still love your family members, but this has to grow.
Right.
The relationship between the spouses have to grow.
Right.
And you can still have fun and show that love.
Yeah.
But that family member should never become the first before the spouse.
No family member before. No family member should ever be more
important than your spouse.
And you're going to hear that statement again because one of these weeks,
some people may disagree, but
and you're entitled to your opinion.
To your opinion,
right? The reality is, if you want your marriage to thrive and be healthy, that relationship has to be paramount above every other one. That's the bottom line. Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about here. The marriage is being healthy. The marriage is thriving. You can have
happy spouse, happy house
all day long and twice on Sunday. You can have a plant that grows this high and it looks good. It's green leaves. It's fresh looking. It's up. It's stiff, and it's it looks like a healthy plant, but it's always meant to grow this tall.
Right.
But because you're not giving it everything it needs to grow this tall, you're only giving it enough to grow this tall. It's the same thing with the marriage. If we're only giving our marriage enough to grow this tall and this strong, that's all it'll ever be.
Yeah.
But when we begin to give our marriage everything that it can have to become everything that it could be, it can be as tall as the lamp back here above my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so make sure that you're giving your marriage everything that you can. And that means not competing with people who are not in the same category as you anyway.
Right.
Second thing, be on the same page with your spouse.
These are tips for setting boundaries with your in-laws.
Be on the same page.
Number one is
spouse.
Don't compete. And number two is be on the same page.
On the same page with your spouse.
Be on the same page with your spouse.
Let me say it again. Did I miss anybody?
No, be on the same page with
It's
your
so important.
spouse.
It is so important. It is so vitally important that we're on the same page. Being on the same page does not always necessarily mean we agree. It just means we're in agreement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I cannot like the way you see it and yet still can agree with you that that's the way it needs to be for our sake.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying.
You're on the same page, you're reading the same words, but it may come across differently.
Absolutely.
For each of you.
Absolutely.
But if you're on the same page and both of you are reading the same page and one doesn't understand what that page is saying, talk to each other about it.
Right. Or if you do understand it, it just doesn't mean as much.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I could take it, I could leave it.
Yeah.
It means something to you, therefore I'm going to honor it and respect it.
Right.
Be on the same page. That's what we're talking about here. Be in sync with each other, just to say it's not my boundary, but it's her boundary.
Yes.
So it's our boundary.
Yes.
And so it'll be honored, it'll be respected, it'll be maintained, whether I establish it or not.
Right.
There are going to be things that matter to one spouse that don't matter to the other spouse.
Right.
Nevertheless, because it matters to one spouse, it affects the marriage.
Yes.
So we have to, if
can
we
you say that again?
What?
That was good.
What I said?
It matters to one's.
Because it matters to one spouse, it affects the marriage.
Yes.
Yes.
That's good to know.
Yes. Write that in your notes. You're going to do it later. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. I had to say that. But it's so important that we remind ourselves the marriage is bigger than the two people in it.
Yeah.
Individually. Our marriage, you and I, is bigger than me. What's best for our marriage is bigger than what I want. And that has to be understood too. And I'm using those different words on purpose. It's not the marriage, it's not what's best for the marriage is bigger than what's best for me. Because what's best for me has to be what's best for the marriage.
Yeah.
People get in trouble when they choose what they want over what's best for the marriage.
Yeah.
That's when you get in trouble.
Right.
And it comes in so many different forms of friendships, relationships. Well, I'm not going to stop being their friend just because you don't like them. Right. I've been knowing them longer than I've been knowing you. Well, guess what? You should have married them. But you didn't. You married the one you're married to.
Right.
You're sleeping with the one that you're sleeping with. Showering with the one that you're showering with. So as a result of that, if you're making a conscious choice to become more intimate with one person over somebody else, all of that should create its own natural boundary that says this other person knows to be my primary, to be paramount, to be of greatest importance.
Yeah.
And we've got to be careful with that. So when you're on the same page with your spouse, again, even if it's not your boundary, because it's your spouse's boundary,
it should be important.
It should be important to you as well. I'm not going to do certain things, say certain things. I won't bring up certain people because I know that rubs you the wrong way.
Right.
You might say, well, if you want to be their friend, just don't bring them around me.
Right.
Well, then that means I'm not going to bring them up around you. I'm going out with the guys and then so-and-so might be there, or I won't have so-and-so pick me up because I know they make you uncomfortable. Right. And so it's all of that. I was reading an interesting post on Facebook in one of the groups that I'm in, where a young lady was having a challenge with her husband. They'd been married for a few years. He had children prior to the marriage. She did not want kids, made him aware that she did not want kids prior to their marriage, yet they got married anyway, which is a whole red flag. After they got married, when it was his turn to have the kids for the weekend, for the week, or what have you, she would either go into the bedroom and stay away, or she would leave the house altogether because she did not want to have any thing to do with those kids. And she said he began to push a relationship, try to force her to engage with the kids whenever they would come around, and was getting upset with her because she would refuse. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And I'm saying, well, you messed up when you married him.
Right.
You don't get married without having a conversation.
Right.
She said they had the conversation. I told him I didn't want kids, and I didn't want to have nothing to do with the kids he had. So why would you?
So she told him that?
That's what she said in her post.
And he agreed to marry?
He married her anyway, thinking he could change her.
Well, that's the mistake,
my assumption.
Right? Oh, okay.
That's my assumption. But my question is to her, why would you marry someone that already had children if you didn't want any, and you didn't want to have anything to do with them? See, the challenge is we get married for the wrong reasons, and then we get stuck, and then we don't know what to do. And the truth is, if you're marrying a person who has children by someone else, you're going to be hard pressed to not have anything to do with those kids if they're in the kid's life. Now, if all it is a paycheck that they got to cut a check every month and they never get to see the kids, then you're okay. Right. Until the kids become grown and then they want to have a relationship with their daddy or their mama or their whatever. But you got to be on the same page with your spouse. That's what we're talking about here. Be on the same page with your spouse. It's your job to make your in-laws and more importantly, your spouse feel like the spouse is number one. Let me say that again. It's your job to make your in-laws feel like, understand, and know and respect that your spouse is number one. You mentioned earlier about being protected by your husband. And that includes even your siblings. You know, you've got a lot of siblings. But I, as your husband, have a responsibility to not allow them, as best I can, to infringe on our boundaries or the boundaries of our marriage. Same goes for my siblings. And you, as my wife, are entitled to the authority that comes with that, being in that position. Right. That if my sister or my brother happen to threaten a boundary of our marriage, you have the right to speak up. Right. Because we're in this thing together. We're in this love together. That'll last forever. Okay, anyway, outro. But the point is, when we're on the same page, then that means... We do not own the rights to that song. You know you gotta say that now. I don't think they're gonna catch that. I barely sung it right. Know. Okay, go ahead. They might not catch that one, but good looking out. Good looking out. Boundaries are important to establish roles in our lives. And so as my wife, you're the boundary keeper, if you will, for me. And likewise, I'm the boundary keeper for you. Because when it comes to family, we have blind spots. Yeah. We have blinders on. That is true. Family, over the course of decades, will subject us to behaviors and to statements and to perspectives that are detrimental to our individual being. Because they're family, we overlook it. Yeah. I think it was recently when I said something to my sister, and she was like, no, I'm not like that. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't do that. And she was like, well, that's why he don't like me, because you make me out to be, you portray me to be this way. She was like, why would you say that? And I was like, I don't know. But yes, they're all blinders, because I guess as growing up with a sibling, like you think you know, I mean, you do know your sibling, but you assume like, because this new person is they're not going to like them. No, they're not going to like them because that's how they are. And then you portray that spouse in a way, or that sibling in a way where, I'm not going to like them because you portrayed them that way. Right. That's what but you instead of, that's how that you painted that picture. Right. So, that's what but sometimes we, as a spouse or the sibling or siblings or in-laws, we are being made to be that person that we're really not, until you actually sit down and talk to or hang out. Or we only tell the stories of pain. Yeah. We never tell the stories of promise. We never tell the stories of happiness and joy. Guess what? He bought me flowers. Guess what? He bought me a gift. Guess what he did? We always tell you ain't gonna believe what he said. He had the audacity. He had it. Or she, or it goes both ways. But I just had a brain freeze. Look at you. It's contagious. That's what I was gonna say. Our family, then we got to move on to the third part before we get to Bettis first. Our family may struggle with seeing us for who we are, because every time they look at us, they always remember who we were.
Yeah.
I've got an older brother, and I will always be his little brother.
Yeah.
No matter how many degrees I get, no matter how many books I write, no matter how many accomplishments I achieve, no matter how many accolades I receive, no matter what I do in the world, in life, I'm always his little brother. And because of that lens, where I can walk in certain rooms and be applauded, where I can walk in certain rooms and things change because I'm there. I walk in the room where he is, and all I get is a sup. And I mean, that's fine. Don't get me wrong. I love my brother. That's my man, 100 grand. I'm praying for him. He's recovering. He's good. But the point I'm making is
recovering.
Because he had the surgery.
I know, but you gotta
qualify that. Like, he had
you can't just
surgery.
say recover, like,
he had surgery,
and then leave it.
He's recovering. He's doing better. I talked to him the other day, and he went from standing still to crawling, so he's doing better. Good job. But our family may struggle with seeing who we become and all that we've achieved. Our family may struggle with seeing us for who we are, especially through the lens of our spouse.
Yeah, with that person.
And then, so when our spouse gets to talking and our spouse gets to treating us a certain way, our family's like, why are you acting like that? That's just so-and-so. And if we're not on the same page, then we'll get offended.
Yeah.
One spot, I may get offended, or you may get offended at the way that a family treats us.
Right.
But we just dismiss it because that's just how they are.
And we forget that when you become a spouse, you are becoming something new with that spouse. Like you're not changing. You just not that person that you were with your family member. You'll always be that person to them.
Right.
That's my cousin. That's my sis. That's my whoever, my brother. But when you're with your spouse, it has to be different because you're with a different person. It's a different light on your life when you're with the spouse.
Yeah.
So you have to be changed. Like you have to be changed, or else you won't grow to a new person with that person.
Yeah. I like to play chess. I love chess. And the thing about a chess board, a chess game, when the beginning of the game starts, at the beginning of the game, all of the pawns are in front. The king and the queen, they're in the back. By the time the game is over, those pawns have been moved all over the place. If there are any left, the king and queen have been moved out front, to the left, to the right. The pieces on the board have been moved around to different positions, but they're the same piece they were when the game started.
Right.
You may not be in the same place. You are still the same person.
Yeah.
That's my sister. That's my brother. That's my cousin. That's my uncle. That's my auntie. They're always going to be those things. My sister, my brother, my cousin, my uncle, my auntie. They're just not in the same place in my life.
Right.
Because the game has started and now things are different. And we've got to respect that. We've got to understand that. We've got to respect those boundaries.
And you've grown up from that person that you were before you met that person. And your family will not see that person you are with your spouse because you're with your all the time and you're not with them.
Right.
So things are going to be like, they're not going to see like
the
little things. That it's not going to make sense to your family because it's like, that's not you.
Yeah.
Well, yes, it is me because I'm with my spouse.
When did you start eating that?
Right. When did you start saying that? When did you start?
Right.
Yeah, because you're not with me all the time to see who I am with another person other than you or other than them. So yes, it's okay.
Yeah. Be careful when they start telling stories from 3,000 years ago. That's a whole nother show. We'll talk about that later. Okay. Here's the last thing I will say as tips for setting boundaries with your in-laws. Don't be afraid to embrace their viewpoints, because your in-laws will provide and produce a viewpoint pertaining to your spouse that you'll never have because they've been knowing your spouse's whole life.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's helpful when you embrace their viewpoint because it gives you insight into those quirks that your spouse has that you can't quite figure out why they are the way they are. Why do you do that? I don't know. I just always have. And then you talk to that auntie that says, oh, well, when they were 3, this happened, that happened, and that's where that came from.
And sometimes we forget that we were that way.
Yeah.
Because parents would be like, yes, you used to do that when you used to be like, no, I didn't. Yeah,
Right.
well, yes, you did. I was the mom.
Right.
Oh, I was the dad.
I was there. I remember. And so it's important that we embrace the viewpoints of our in-laws because you never know what vital information you can glean from them that'll give you insight into your
That'll
spouse.
help you. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to take their advice all the time. It doesn't mean that you have to subscribe to their way of thinking or to succumb to their perspective regarding your spouse. It simply means that if they're offering you their viewpoint, embrace it, receive it, and then process it to see what from it you can glean and utilize to better know and understand your spouse. You got anything else before we get to Veda's verse?
No.
Outstanding. Well, let's go to Veda's verse.
What's the title of Veda's verse?
A Bridled Tongue. Oh,
A Bridled
Lord.
Tongue.
Oh, Lord. She's trying to tell me something. Oh, Lord. I done said too much.
I'm not trying to tell you something.
God is trying to tell you something. Okay.
A bridled tongue. Husbands and wives need to consider what they say in an effort to be honest. The tongue should be a monitor rather than an open channel of our thoughts. Perhaps we can't keep hurtful thoughts from coming into our minds, but we can refuse to speak those thoughts that might bring pain to another. In a healthy marriage, you can tell your spouse anything, but you aren't obligated to tell your spouse everything. Whenever you wonder whether to tell your spouse something, stop and ask who will benefit if you share it. A tongue that speaks the truth in love rather than total honesty about every feeling that you have is the surest route to intimacy in marriage. Do you think married partners should tell each other everything? What are some things that might be considered off limits? When can total honesty be cruel or harmful? That is Veda's verse for tonight.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Bridled tongue. You got to be careful what you say. You got to be careful how you say it. And
yes,
it is important to be honest with your spouse. You've got to make sure that, like she said, what you're sharing is beneficial to your spouse. Just because you want to give them your 2 cents doesn't mean that they can use it.
Right.
Everybody can't spend your 2 cents. So you're going to make sure that you deposit it in the right place.
And if you're going to say something, stop and think before you say it.
Yeah. Because some things should be said if they're not said with the proper tone.
Yes, you always say
and
that.
the right words, then they won't be
You always say
received.
that's it. It was important what you said, but it's just the tone that you said it.
The how you say it is just as important. And even as we're talking about these boundaries, how you talk about boundaries is important. The way that you say, hey, they crossed the line.
Yeah.
Or hey, they're infringing on our marriage from my viewpoint.
Yes, you were saying something earlier, and I was like, I don't talk like that. And you was like, you do.
Yeah.
I was like, nuh-uh.
But if I was yelling at her, she would have shut down and never would have heard me. So I had to keep my tone comfortable. Because you can make your point without yelling.
Yeah.
You can make your point without screaming.
Sometimes it just feels good to say it that way. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Not all the time.
I can't argue with that. That is true. Listen, that's all we got for this week.
That's all we have.
I think we've covered it enough. I hope that you gleaned something from it. Please make sure you're following us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, so that you can reach out to us, not just receive from us, but
right.
reach
We
out
want to
to
hear
us
from you.
and let us know what you're thinking. How are we helping you? Are we helping you? Is there an area you want us to cover? We'd love to hear from you. That's where we get a lot of these concepts from.
Yeah.
It's through social media. So make sure you're reaching out and letting us know, hey, can you talk about, can you address? Don't forget, next month, live Q&A.
Yay.
You can post your questions, you can post your comments, and we will discuss them live on air for the hour.
Something that
in August
that we've said in the past that you didn't understand, and you want us to rehatch it and explain it more. That's the place.
That's the place to do that.
To do that.
Yep. So go back and if you're
reviewing,
if you are following us on Facebook, the Happy Spouse Happy House Facebook page, then you can go back and watch all of the other episodes. And if there's something in there that we said or that we put out there you didn't understand, maybe you didn't agree with it, and you just want to let us know, that's the place to do that. If you've got a question about something that we've never talked about,
right,
that's the place to do that. So make sure in August you're with us so that you can ask us, but you have to be following us on the Happy Spouse Happy House Facebook page, facebook.com/Happy Spouse House. Look for that logo, and you know you're in the right place.
And we'll do our best to answer questions as best to our knowledge.
We're giving you what we've gotten over the 20 years that we've been married.
20 years.
22 years of relationship. We've taken classes. We've taught classes. We've just gathered a plethora of information. And so we're trying to help you as we unpack it.
Yeah.
Because remember, this all started because we had these conversations on the couch. And so we're just sharing with you what married couples should be talking about. That's all we've got for tonight. This was part 2 of our boundary series. Next week is part 3, where we're going to be talking about, what did I say we're going to be talking about next week? Let me tell you. Hold on.
Is it X's?
Part 3, boundary series, part 3, parent of child. On the 15th of July, where we will be unpacking that.
Hey, I have something to say.
Our show. Talk to us for.
That is Mac, and his birthday is on Saturdays. We want to wish him a happy birthday.
Wait a minute.
Happy birthday, babe.
Thank you, dear.
July 10th is his birthday. We'll be celebrating his birthday this Saturday.
Appreciate it.
We hope you have a blast.
Appreciate it.
Having another year on this side of heaven.
Looking forward to it.
You guys can shout him out and say happy birthday in the comments. Tell him happy birthday. Just send him a whole bunch of love.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you, sir.
I love you.
Love you back.
Listen, she already said who I am, but that's Vetta.
And that's Mac.
And this has been
Couch Conversations.
We'll see you next week.
Good night. See you guys next week. Thanks for joining.